Thanks for joining us. My name is Heather McVeigh. I'm the director of the high school guidance department, and I'm really pleased tonight to be joined by Abby Leon Murphy, Joanna Kaplan, and Dave Soulard. Jody Walsh was instrumental in helping put this presentation together. Unfortunately, she came down ill, so she will not be with us tonight, but I'm sure any of you who work with her, she will be back next week and is happy to answer questions. So again, thanks for joining us. The goal for tonight is really to give you a broad overview of what you and your student can expect between now and the start of their senior year, how to best prepare for their post-secondary lives. Tonight's focus really is on the college process. I just want to make sure that for those students who are not thinking of college, we are here to support all students, whether it's career, military, vocational schools, technical schools. We really pride ourselves in supporting all students, and we will do so individually as that time comes when we're meeting with those students. But for tonight, it's really focused on the college planning process for those students and families. The agenda is to talk about, like I mentioned before, a timeline of what you and your students should be doing over the next year, year and a half. We'll talk some about standardized testing, college visits and methods to research colleges. And then we will talk about our college and career platform called Naviance. And for those of you who have older children at home, you may be familiar with this, but it's a wonderful resource that we're very fortunate to have, as are our students. It's a lot of information, and I think it will be very helpful for you in the process of looking at colleges. As I mentioned in the email, this presentation is being recorded. We will share it out on our website, probably Friday or Monday. In addition, we will share out the presentation so you have it to reference after tonight's presentation. So I am going to turn it over to Mr. Soulard, and he's going to jump in and talk through timeline and standardized testing with you.
All right, thank you. So once again, hello to everybody. Thank you for jumping on the presentation tonight. Again, as Heather mentioned, Jody Walsh is not with us, so I have the responsibility and honor of carrying forward her slides that she prepared to discuss with you about the application or search timeline. So I will do that, and then I will move into some slides about the standardized testing process. So be prepared to hear from me for a little bit here at the start, but I promise it's not the Dave show, but you've got me for the first few slides, to say the least. But here on this first slide, and again, Heather referenced this, we really do pride ourselves on the opportunity and really the honor to be able to work with students, no matter what their particular interest might be. We are a department of 8, and among the department, we've got decades and decades of experience working with students who choose any and all of these various paths. We work diligently to stay current on the research as it relates to best practices in preparing for any of these pathways. So we really do look forward to these next few months and years as we work with your students to help them find their own individual pathway. We know it's an exciting time. We know it can be an overwhelming time. And certainly for many parents, it's a time where you are now raring to go. You're excited about the opportunity to work with your students, your children, and help them find their own path. But we also recognize that for a lot of students, they're really not quite there yet. They've just begun their junior year. Granted, we're a quarter of the way through, but a lot of times they are not quite ready to hit the stride and dive in deeply as you may be. So we encourage you to try to be patient and to listen to them as you go through this early phase of the process. Many times you might ask them, a simple question like, hey, I was on that presentation last night, and I was wondering if you wanted to maybe go and maybe visit a college sometime. And they'll fire back, well, that's just dumb. Why would I want to do that? Well, understand that, hear the words, but understand the subtext of that. And oftentimes that's probably something along the lines of, well, I haven't heard my friends talking about that yet, so why would I be doing that, right? Or hey, I was on that presentation, they were talking about PSAT results coming back. Maybe we should take a look at those. I don't have to do that. No one's doing that. Well, what that really might mean is I'm kind of scared. I'm not sure how I did, and I'm worried about disappointing myself or disappointing you. So as you go into this process, again, just sort of have patience with them. They are at least as nervous, if not more nervous than you are about all of this. And we are just getting started. So I don't want you to feel as though there is any catch up that needs to be done wherever you are presently in the process. And for most, I think that that is not even yet beginning step one. That's absolutely fine. And you're going to hear us talk throughout the evening about how you can jump into this process at any time. It moves at its own pace differently for each and every student and for each and every family. As you are going through it again, another piece of maybe advice from having seen this go in different ways for different families. What can be really helpful is to plan to schedule time for some of these conversations. I think that a lot of times we hear students react better, conversations go better. It can help to preserve your relationship in all other areas of your family life if they can know that things are a little bit more predictable. Hey, Tuesday nights are a quiet night for you. Maybe after you come home from dance, let's spend 30 minutes talking about that later this week. Or, this Sunday, after the early football games, we want to sit down and talk for 15 or 20 minutes about what the next steps are that you should be taking. So again, trying to find times to plan that with them, give them a little bit of a heads up that it's going to be coming, can certainly yield some better results in those conversations as you're having them. So now that we've decoded a little bit of some of their messages, maybe ID'd some potential landmines, let's jump into the process a little bit here and see how it rolls out into this next slide. So we're calling this the fall career development focus. I don't know about you, but I certainly still have some leaves on the ground. So let's consider this to still be the fall time. And these are really some of the things that we hope that our students are doing, your students are doing. The self-reflection piece, it's critically important, but also really, really difficult for students at this age. And I know that that's almost hard for us to believe when we sometimes think that all they know of is themselves and their own world. That may be true on some days, but the reality is that for them to reflect and think about what they're good at, what they really enjoy, those are thoughts that aren't maybe as natural for them to be thinking about. So this is an area where we really feel as though you can be critically helpful in helping them to recognize their skills, their strengths, etc. But at the same time, being honest with them about that. And hey, those students that are really focused on, let's say, an engineering career, it just seems really interesting to them. Maybe someone at home or someone in the family is pursuing that, but they've been a student who's struggled with math all along. Have that honest conversation of, well, if that's going to be your goal, what do we need to do over these next few months or years to help you be successful at that? So helping them to identify their strengths and skills, but also be honest about the areas where they may have some need for growth. The second element there, that career research and exploration, we'll talk about that as we go through this presentation, but in all honesty, that began a little bit last year as we worked with these students in what we call our sophomore seminar, where many of them engaged in an interest inventory and perhaps even did some early stage development around a career plan. So that career research and exploration piece absolutely has already begun, but it is an evolving process, as it is for all of us, even in our adult lives. We are continuing to explore and consider who we are in our larger world of work context. We hope that they are able to listen to the various members of their support team. We've outlined a few of those who may be a part of their team. But again, I would caution here, too many voices is sometimes like too many cooks in the kitchen. It can get a little overwhelming for them. Not everybody at the holiday party that you might have upcoming needs to weigh in or have their voice really listened to. So I think the way that we encourage students to approach it is to really hear everyone, but only listen to those people that they trust. So again, helping them to identify who the necessary and useful supportive members of that team really are, and helping them to maybe put some of the noise to the side from people that may just have too many opinions that can cloud the process. And then the last piece of this career development focus is really around Google Classroom. We've been using this now for a number of years, where each student is a member of a guidance Google Classroom, and we post periodically there for them to, with different ideas of things that they should be doing to keep them engaged and moving along in the process. Recently, within the last month or 6 weeks, we posted a bulleted list of some things that they should be doing during the fall and winter. A lot of the things that we're going to talk to you about here tonight. We also recently posted some information about a resume building workshop, or how to develop and construct a most appropriate resume. So we do keep updated information there that we hope will continue to move students forward as they go through the rest of this year. So speaking of those fall and winter activities, and a little bit more about career research, as I mentioned, many students took that Naviance Career Interest Profiler last year. They may or may not recall that. We understand. But truth be told, they did. And those results are in Naviance for them. I know Ms. Kaplan's going to talk a little bit more about that when she reviews Naviance in greater detail. But I'll mention that, that interest profiler can be reset, so they could reach out to us to do so. But I would caution and say that, the other interest profilers that are linked here may be of greater use. It can often be helpful to try different interest profilers out, because the questions might hit them slightly differently on a particular day, or the way that they're phrased in one particular interest profiler might be slightly different and yield some different results and pull on some different patterns. So any of these three resources are fantastic for that interest inventory piece. We encourage them to use those results to explore career matches. So for any interest inventory that you take, your results are going to give you a little bit of detail about what that profile means, and then link you to a variety of careers that match with those patterns of likes and dislikes or interests. Exploring those career matches can help to expose students to careers that they might not have heard about. We know that they are not often exposed to a wide range of careers. They hear about perhaps the work that you do at home or other family members might do. They see, people in education on a day-to-day basis, but they might not be as aware of all of the variety of careers that are out there. So they can be exposed to more careers, as well as then, by extension, different majors. So as they start to think about what the important elements are in their college search, taking an interest profiler, exploring some of the careers, and then seeing the resulting majors might be a good step. Now, I would want them to be aware going into it that career research is not a quick hit. It's not the type of thing that in the sort of TikTok mindset is going to be over in about 3 to 5 minutes. This is going to take a little bit of time, but it's time that is really well spent. Even if they have forever, since they were 5 and 6, said that they wanted to be a particular profession. Spending time doing an interest profiler and some of that research is still beneficial to either confirm for them that, heck yeah, that is absolutely still what I want to do, and my interests match up with that beyond just what I think I want to do. So it can confirm that for them. But in the rare case that it doesn't, maybe it exposes them to some other ideas that are worth some consideration, which at this stage in the process is welcomed. They have not yet gone down the road very far of exploring colleges and thinking about what those next steps might be. So better now than later to identify that a particular career might not have been a great fit, or maybe what else might be a better fit. So again, the career research piece, specifically these interest profilers, can be a great next step. We don't want them to get bogged down too much in identifying a specific major, though, okay? Because this process can move forward regardless of whether they've identified a major. We know that many, many students, and depending on where you might get your research from, could be anywhere from 25 to 30, as much as 50 or more % of students will change majors while they're in college. So this process does not need to wait for them to figure out a specific major, but knowing a particular major or a particular career of interest can help to move the process in a particular direction. Okay. So that being said, we've now moved into the winter. Colder months are here. We're hoping for not too much snow, so we can all get to school every day, right? And move our way through the seasons. But as we talk about some of the activities for the winter, PSAT results are coming out very, very shortly. You can see the date listed there. That can be a helpful trigger for some next steps that we'll talk about as we get into some of the standardized testing information. But we want to make sure that you're aware that those standardized testing, those PSAT results are on their way very shortly. Students will be working with us during the months of January to March. So when we come back from that December vacation, within a week or so, we begin meeting individually with students to move in a little bit more of a directed path towards this college process. Again, they will meet with us individually in our offices. We work to demonstrate for them the Naviance college search piece. Because our goal is for them to be able to direct this process individually. We want them to be able to do some searching on their own because their interests in a particular type of college or a location where they might want to go to college will evolve over time. So we as guidance counselors very much recognize our role in helping to provide a start to a list and to continue to be a sounding board for lists as they develop. But it's far more important for students to be able to do for themselves in that regard. Naviance is a fantastic tool for that. And that is the primary college search tool that we will be demonstrating for them during those meetings. We'll also talk with them about some of the basics, what type of school are you interested in? What are some of those potential interests or career interests? Just how far away do you want to be from home, so that we can start to help them to, round some of those ideas into shape so that they can, again, continue on in their searching as they go through the months of January through April and into May. Our goal in that conversation, though, is to help them keep the conversation broad enough that it doesn't narrow in too closely and exclude too many schools too quickly. For example, you'll have a student who says, well, I'd like to be on the East Coast and I'd like to have a school with a pool, and I'd also like there to be a 5-star restaurant on campus. Well, I can think of one sort of in my mind that might have those things, but boy, if that's how you are going to guide your own search, we've gotten too narrow too quickly. So we want to help them to keep it broad, but also move it in a particular direction based on more important interests beyond just perhaps that pool and 5-star restaurant. Sounds like a great place to go, but we've got to think about some other places as well. So that's sort of how that initial conversation will go with them. Another piece of that conversation will also hit upon a standardized testing timeline. We'll talk about that here tonight a little bit more in depth, but let me just say here that January and February is certainly not too early for us to start to develop that timeline around standardized testing. We do not believe that students need to be taking the SAT or ACT in January or February, but planning that timeline so that they can have a thoughtful approach to standardized testing is something that should begin in January and February. So that's why we will have that part of the conversation with them as well. Whether or not they plan on taking tests early or later, taking or registering for standardized tests is something that does happen from home. They'll create accounts with your guidance, and perhaps with your credit cards, they'll register, or perhaps it'll be a credit card and some finances of their own. But that is something that we will talk with them about, but ultimately does happen from the comfort of home. So then after we've had that first 30 or 40-minute meeting, we move into some of the activities of the winter and spring. Our goal is to help them research schools in depth, and that's something that they will do, again, on their own. We have that first meeting to help guide them a bit, give them some tips and techniques, but we really want them to then take that information and research in depth. If they have a specific major in mind, then terrific. Their research might be around, are the schools that I'm looking at accredited for the type of major that I'm looking for? What's the size of the faculty in the department that I might be interested in? Or what's the number of majors within that department, so that if I decide to change majors, maybe I will have a different home within that same department. If students don't have a major, then maybe they're searching based on the number of majors overall that a college has, or the design of their general education curriculum, or maybe what their career services offerings are, so that they know that they're going to land at a place that will be able to keep them comfortable over 4 years and move them towards a particular major and career path. Whatever it is that they are researching, once they come upon some schools that they are interested in, we do think that visiting colleges is a crucial piece of this, and February and April breaks are a great time to do that. Typically, you would sign up in January for a February visit, March for some April visits, but those are great times because the campuses are still alive. They've got students on there, and we really feel as though that is a great way to get the best picture of what this campus might be like for your students if they were to enroll there down the road. As they continue on with that college search in greater depth, we're also meeting with them about courses for their senior year. We will certainly encourage them to explore interests, right? Use those elective periods to delve a little bit more deeply into an area of interest. But we also would caution them about the idea of sort of mini majoring, or focusing, again, too deeply on one particular area. Colleges across the country, competitive schools, highly competitive schools, are looking for students to remain broadly informed and aware of the various content areas. You'll see on college websites that they're looking for students to take 3, if not 4 years in all of the content areas: English, math, science, language, and social science. So again, we would encourage students to remain broadly engaged in their academics, but perhaps use that elective period to delve in a little bit more deeply in some places. Okay. Then you'll also see in that second bullet that we reference students requesting letters of recommendation. Again, can't highlight this enough. Please, 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 after April vacation. We're in this process with you right now early, so that you're aware of what's happening and what's going to be coming down the line. Teachers write these letters of recommendation voluntarily, and they are still just barely digging out from the pile of letters that they were responsible for writing or that they volunteered to write in the early part of this fall. So please put the reins on things a little bit when it comes to requesting letters of recommendation after April vacation. And another note about that, be aware, colleges, the vast majority of colleges are looking for 0 or 1 letter of recommendation. So the idea that every student needs to ask 2 and 3 teachers, our request, and just short of, I say, rule, would be that students this year in their junior year only ask 1 teacher. And that could be someone that they've had this year, could be someone that they might have had last year. If they're looking for more letters of recommendation, look for other voices that can talk about other skill sets that they might have, employers, volunteer coordinators, things like that. So as you think about and help them think about who those proper letters might come from, keep it to 1 teacher and someone from perhaps another part of their life. And then you'll see down below, students that are interested in athletics, Division 1 or 2, they must register with the NCAA Eligibility Center. That's necessary in order for them to take official visits and things of that nature. Students that might be considering Division 3 do not need to register. There is no eligibility process. That's the eligibility is determined at those institutions themselves. There is not an NCAA oversight of Division III athletes with regard to eligibility. The only thing you would be doing in the eligibility center at this time is working toward getting preliminary eligibility. And that's just based on students having taken the necessary number of academic units up to this point in their junior year. And I can tell you that without exception, our students meet those eligibility requirements for initial eligibility. It's largely part of our graduation requirements. So it is just a necessary piece, though, for students who might be looking at D1 or D2 athletics. So that got us through the winter and into the spring. Flowers are starting to bloom, or I guess reality is it's springtime in New England. We're probably hoping for the last of the snow to melt. It's 45 degrees, but it is what it is here. Probably why so many of our students are exploring schools in Alabama and Florida and Georgia more and more. They know something that we all never learned, I guess. But as we look forward, this first bullet keyword I want to hit upon here is that the revised idea for careers and college majors. So revision really is the key here. The more they research, the more they will understand about themselves and understand about what is out there. This process is not linear. So for all of you who are people who like to start something, have it move steadily forward until culmination, this is going to be uncomfortable for you. We're going to ask you to be patient with yourself, be patient with your students, check in with them periodically, help guide them, but understand that it is going to start, it is going to pause, it'll move forward 2 steps, back 3 steps, but that is what this process is as you work towards ultimately applying to colleges. Understand, we're talking about a full year from now or so. Okay, this is a long process that will ebb and flow. It is an exciting time, as the second bullet mentions, but the pace of decision-making really is different for every student and for every family. So I cannot echo, or I cannot state this enough. Please have patience as students evolve through this process. It's a little bit like sort of trying to start a standard. For those of you who might remember a standard transmission car, right? You're up on a hill, and if you give it a little bit too much gas, you're going to stall out. So don't push too hard. Don't sit back too far, but just try to find that exact right spot to be able to push them and then back off as they need to in order for this process to move smoothly forward. And then last bullet, certainly, once career research and exploration and tentative choices are there, it can be less stressful. But that's like saying once everything's perfect, it's going to be easier. Well, yeah, no kidding. We know that. So set a realistic goal for yourselves as a family of where you would like to be in the spring. In my mind, a realistic goal would be to have identified maybe 1 or 2 schools that are, absolutely we plan to apply to these schools. And then maybe there's a larger group of 10 or 15 that are like, we think maybe we want to do some more research. We're considering them. There's going to be countless schools that have been ruled out for one reason or another. Okay. But I will also say, if you find yourself into the springtime and it is really just about time for them to come out of hibernation and give you the big yawn and say, well, okay, I guess we could go and look at a school now if you really want to, mom or dad. Great. You're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. We can work from there forward. It does not mean that this process is doomed if you don't get to a place this spring where you've identified a few schools of interest. So again, it's individualized, it's personalized, and we're there to walk with you all every step of the way. Okay. So that is springtime. We're now into full summer mode. Just a couple of things here as we identify some things to look forward to. Franklin High School offers a couple of different boot camps. One to work on completing the common application. Very quickly, that's an application that's accepted at literally hundreds of schools across the country. Almost all students end up applying to some schools that accept or require the common app, so it can be a useful thing to do. Certainly can be done on your own without attending the boot camp, but that boot camp is a great way to try to get that application completed over the summer. College essay writing boot camp as well happens over the summer months. Those happen primarily in August, at least for the boot camp anyway, because the Common App rolls over, if you will, it becomes live for next year in August. So that's why we wait until then. Those signups for those are through Lifelong Learning. It's not a plug. I don't get any kickback, but I will say that they do fill up relatively quickly. So keep your eyes peeled for some of that stuff. Other things to be doing over the summer, certainly volunteering, internships, and job shadowing. I think that particularly internships and job shadows can be hard to come by. Certainly post-COVID, fewer people are even going into offices, so there are fewer people to supervise students who might be looking to shadow or to intern and things of that nature. But whatever it is that students might be doing, don't hyper focus on the summertime as the time to do it. The reality is that colleges are most interested in seeing students participate in something longitudinally. So don't feel the need to dive into 6 or 7 different activities over the summer. The better thing to do is find 1 or 2 things that your student might be most interested in. Start that now. Start that over the winter, whenever you can, and carry that forward through and into the summer. Whether, again, that's volunteering, internship, job shadowing, maybe it's their employment. Whatever it might be, could be their sports, their clubs, whatever it is. But again, longitudinally is ideal. And then the last thing there on this slide before we move into some of the other information about testing is just those pre-college summer programs. These have really exploded on college campuses as they continue to try to increase their own revenue in different ways when their campuses are more dormant. They're great opportunities. No doubt they are. They are genuine and authentic opportunities where students will learn and meet with different students from different backgrounds in areas that they might be passionate about. But they are also, by and large, really, really expensive. We're talking in the neighborhood of thousands, many thousands of dollars sometimes for these 1, 2, 3 week camps where students are living on campus and things. Again, great opportunities, but I wouldn't want you to think that these are the types of things that kick the door open at a particular college. Well, my student went to a summer camp opportunity at X university. That means they are more likely to get into X university next year. Not the case. It doesn't mean that it's not a great opportunity and that they won't make some nice connections. But I would not encourage people to do this, particularly given the expense. We want you to just be aware that if that is money that you have to allocate towards this, fantastic, and I'm sure the students would have a great time. But don't do that with the plan that this is going to increase the likelihood that a student will get into that or any particular college for having participated. So summer is also a great opportunity to dive into what our next topic is. So now I'm going to transition out of my Jody Walsh voice and back into my own. You probably won't notice much of a difference there, but we're going to talk a little bit about testing. And certainly I think something that's on many people's minds would be, where are we with standardized testing? You've been hearing for years now, particularly even pre-pandemic, but certainly within the pandemic, that schools were going test optional. Students weren't able to take the tests. So what was going to be the natural outcome of that? Well, I'm happy to say we don't know. The reality is that many schools have adopted a test optional policy and have advertised that it will go on for a certain amount of time. For example, Northeastern University, a school here in the area where many of our students are interested and choose to apply, they've said that they're test optional until 2026. So we've got a couple more years of knowing what Northeastern status is. UMass Amherst, on the other hand, I literally called them this morning to make sure that I was giving you the freshest and most accurate information. The person I spoke with confirmed they do not know yet whether or not they will be test optional as students apply next year. So what does that mean? Well, for most students, that means that planning to test is probably the right mode to be in right now. That being said, a couple brief things still here on this slide that I want to hit upon. It is an evolving landscape of testing requirements. So that website listed for you there, fairtest.org. Bookmark that, encourage your student to bookmark that. That is going to be a place to check back frequently for sort of like a clearinghouse, if you will, of this information. The best place, and really the only place to get the most accurate information, though, is going to be on the individual college's websites. So I would encourage you to always go there for that information if you can. Just in terms of terminology, test optional, test blind, it's listed there for you. But optional means that if a student chooses to submit it, they will be considered, or their scores will be considered. But if they choose not to submit test scores, their application will still receive a full and thorough review. Test blind means that even if a student wished with all of their might that their SAT scores or ACT scores were considered, those schools do not consider test scores no matter what. So some examples of test blind schools in the area: WPI, Stonehill, Merrimack, and then more globally, if you will, or across the country, the larger system, if you will, the UC system, University of California system, is test blind. For those schools that are test optional, many of our students, we would encourage them to think about where do their scores fit within the middle 50% of a school's testing range. That's information, again, you can find on a college's website or in Naviance. But that is often a litmus test for whether or not to use or to bother to send your standardized test scores into individual schools. Last thing I'll say on this slide, as you are doing your research and as your students are doing their research, if a school says that they are test optional, or even those that are test blind, but more specifically the test optional schools, look specifically whether or not there are any caveats around college majors, or so are tests optional for the school but required at a particular major, or are they required for any competitive scholarships? Throughout the pandemic, test optional meant optional for all of that stuff, but as testing comes back online a little bit more, those are some areas where we may see testing become more necessary for certain students. Okay, so that's the information that we have. This next slide is going to talk a little bit more or show you the comparison between the two different tests. And these are the two that are out there, SAT versus ACT. You can see the differences here. I won't go into it in too much detail other than to point out, if you look at the individual sections, so we've got math, then science, then reading comprehension, then grammar. The one thing that's true across all of those sections is that on the SAT, students have more time per question. But at the same time, the questions on the SAT are generally a bit more complex. So while you've got a little bit more time, you've got to do a little bit deeper thinking in order to be able to answer those questions. You know your students best. They know themselves pretty well, we think. Which type of test will suit them best? There really is no way to know unless they take both tests. Now, I don't want you to think that we're encouraging them to take both the SAT and the ACT multiple times, but we do think that bothering to explore both tests makes some sense. The other big difference on the SAT or between the SAT and ACT that we hear students cite often is that science section. The ACT does have a science reasoning portion. The SAT does not have a section named science reasoning, but the SAT does test similar skills. The reality is that ACT section of science is not how much biology and chemistry you remember, but more it is science reasoning, chart reading, graph interpretation, data analysis type things, which we do see on the SAT as well. So again, the big question is the one that's on the next slide, which is, which test should my student take? As I mentioned, we really think that they should test both out. We do not want you to pay to take both, though. We believe that there are free and relatively easy ways to check out both of those tests. As we mentioned earlier, students took the PSAT, or many students took the PSAT earlier this year. Whether they did or didn't take the PSAT, there are free, full-length SAT, and ACT practice tests available on the individual SAT and ACT sites. We've got a nice December vacation coming up. We would encourage you to either use a PSAT result or print out an SAT practice test and an ACT practice test. They have the sections broken down. They tell you how long to take on each section. Take them under timed conditions, then compare scores. One of the big differences that wasn't on the previous slide about comparing the ACT to SAT is the scoring. So the SAT, most families are familiar with, it goes up to 1,600. The ACT goes to 3,600. So how do I compare those two if my student takes both practice tests? A simple Google search, SAT, ACT compare, is going to bring you to a chart where they will tell you one SAT as it relates to an ACT score, and you can see which test a student performed better on. So within a matter of, let's say, 2 or 3 hours of practice or sample testing on either one, they can get a practice score and then decide which way they are best served to move forward. Once they decide which test is theirs or which one is they are best suited to, we've got the registration information here for you with the different dates. The one thing I want to encourage you not to do, or encourage students not to do, is rush into this. I think we hear more and more students say, well, I just want to get the testing done with. Well, you know, I don't know about you, but if I had a surgery that I needed to get done and they said, well, our surgeon isn't going to be available to provide the surgery to you for another 2 months, but we've got a third-year med student who could do it for you in about 2 weeks. Personally, I would rather wait for the fully certified surgeon to do that. In the same way, our students that are currently taking Algebra 2 haven't even been exposed to all of the math that is going to be tested on these tests. So delaying a bit into May or June is probably in their best interest and is probably going to yield their best result. Likewise, spending time over the January, February, March months doing some actual preparation for these tests is probably going to put them in their best situation to perform well when they take these tests. So I understand the tendency to want to get in there and start taking them and get it done. But again, my advice, our advice, is to sit back, work through preparation, and take the test once, maybe twice, but fully prepared each time that you take it. Okay. Lastly, you have some information here about the registration information. What I want to point out here is that you do register directly on those on those companies' websites. It's not something that you do through Franklin High School. If you're interested in testing at Franklin High School, we are a test site for the SAT a couple of times each year, but you would need to register early for those. Thank you, Heather, for popping that back. You can see March and June upcoming are dates that we are a test site. Back to that other slide, I just want to point out fee waivers are available for students that are eligible. Eligibility tends to be around students who might qualify for free or reduced lunch. But if you or your student has any question about whether or not they might qualify for a fee waiver, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And the very last slide that I'm responsible for, again, I apologize for taking so much of your time, just about test prep. It is an important piece of the process. It can be done free of charge through Khan Academy. Those students who might have taken the PSAT can link their PSAT scores to Khan Academy and get some customized SAT prep based on their pattern of areas of struggle. So they can watch mini units and take practice sections. My favorite thing for students to do is to do a little bit of practice, then print out a section or print out a practice test and take a section. Again, practicing paper and pencil, which is the way they're going to be taking the test when the time comes, really is the best way to go about it. Certainly for those families that wish to go the route of maybe a private one-on-one tutor or taking a test prep course, those come with the fees associated with them, but they do set aside specific time that you know your student is going to engage in that preparation. If they're a student who's going to be a little bit more self-motivated, or if you can drive a harder ship and say, hey, Tuesdays at 7 o'clock every night, you are going to do some SAT prep for half an hour, and they'll go about doing that. Then it can be done independently at a low or no cost. So again, these are all viable ways to do some test prep, and I appreciate you kind of working through this with me, and I will gladly hand it off to our next presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Soulard. Hi, everyone. We are now going to discuss the foundation of the college search. So why are we going to college? Where do you want to go to college is often asked too early in the process. We say this because a student is not able to answer where they want to go to college until they have answered why they want to go. We want to encourage students to self-reflect, to encourage introspection with the college application process by asking questions such as, why invest so much money into a college education? Who do you hope to meet, connect with, and learn from in college? How and in what setting do you learn best? Is a sense of community important to you? Do you want a balance between academics and social life? By answering these questions, students can start thinking about where they want to go to school, which leads me to finding your fit. It is important for students to start thinking about what they are looking for in a college. So like Mr. Soulard said, during sophomore years, we asked our students to complete the career interest profiler in Naviance, which focused on a student's interest in career choices. They can use these results and personal preferences of what they are looking for in a college. For instance, they should start thinking about location. Do they want to stay close to home in Massachusetts, maybe New England? Do they want to be a plane ride away? They also should take into account the cost of travel in those plans. Do they want a small school or a large school? What type of setting are they interested in? Do they want to be in a rural area, maybe a suburb or the city? They should start also thinking about majors. They may not know what they want to major in, and they can go in undecided, and that's completely fine. But that's something that many students would like to consider. Another factor is the learning environment. Does your student have a preference on the size in the class? Do they prefer small classes, or do they like large lecture halls for classes? And then another factor is cost. So we do recommend that you start the conversation about cost now, so then that can guide the options for schools that your student is looking at. Along with having a conversation around preference in a school, it is important to look at the academic fit. So on average, students apply to approximately 6 to 8 schools. So this is an individual process. So some students apply to more and some apply to less, but 6 to 8 is around the average. So in creating a list of the schools with our students, we encourage them to have a balance with academic and financial fit, taking into account the safety, target, and reach schools. A safety school is when the student's GPA and SAT or ACT scores are above the admission averages for the college's most recent freshman class. Target schools are where the GPA and SAT or ACT scores match the admissions averages, and reach schools are where the student's GPA and SAT or ACT scores are below the average. And then on the next slide, and thinking about admissions, there are various parts of the application process. The first is the transcript. So on the transcript is the student's current GPA and strength of schedule, showing the classes that the student has enrolled in. Standardized test scores may be required by some of the colleges and universities. So currently there are over 1,800 test optional or test blind schools. But again, like Mr. Soulard said, that could definitely change for the class of 2024. So just be mindful of that. Extracurricular activities and leadership roles are a third part of the application process. So how does a student spend their time outside of their academic day? Are they involved in clubs, volunteering, work, athletics, art, music, internships, or do they help care for loved ones? Those are all parts to a student's life outside of school that the admission counselors like caring about. The college essay is an important part of the application process as it allows the admission counselor to learn more about the individual person that may not be featured in the application. It is important for the student's own voice to be featured in the essay. And so when too many people start to edit the student's essay, the student's voice gets lost. Does your student have any special talents? Those too should be featured in the application process. Letters of recommendation, they add to the application and can come from the teacher, where the teacher can speak to how the student is in the classroom setting, a coach or employer, as they can speak to the student's work ethic and collaboration with others. And your student will also get a letter from the guidance counselor, and we can speak to their personality and traits that make them stand out. Demonstrated interest is another part of the application process, and this can happen both in person or virtually. So this is the amount of interest the student shows in a college, for instance, through official college campus visits, interviews, and communication with admission counselors. And then always, just as a reminder, please check the specific college websites for admission requirements specific to the colleges. So we encourage our students to go out and visit the colleges and universities that they're interested in. So February and April breaks of the student's junior year are great times to visit. Classes are in session during those times, so the students can really get an idea of what the college is like. At Franklin High School, we have a policy where we allow students 6 excused absences between 11th and 12th grade for them to go out on college campuses. They need to notify the house office before attending the visit and submit documentation from the college to the house office after attending. Colleges have open houses, tours, and information sessions. Open houses typically provide more information and are usually an all-day event. So during that time, you often get to hear from the president, faculty members, financial aid staff, and sometimes even a panel of students. They learn about different programs such as honors colleges, study abroad programs, and even tour the campuses. Tours are usually about an hour in length, and these do not go into as much detail as open houses. We recommend attending information sessions, which may be the same day as the tour. At the information session, you can learn more about the programs and majors available. And like Mr. Soulard said, we do recommend registering early. Being able to visit the college is a great way to learn about the campus. So you can register for a visit by going to the college website, and often it may say visit or is in the undergraduate admissions tab. We encourage students to research the college before attending and developing questions that are important to them. When researching on the website, check if they have the major that you're interested in, the application requirements, student life, and the interview opportunities. While you are on a tour, take notes, take in the surroundings of what the campus and area around the school looks like, take pictures, and eat lunch if available. We want your students to get as much out of the tour as possible to determine if they can see themselves being a student there. Visiting colleges gives students the best idea of what the campus is like. However, virtual tours have become more popular and also give the students an overview of the college campus. You can find virtual tours by going to the college's school-specific websites. You can also find them by going to the UVisit site. We encourage students to get a student's perspective on academics, student life, and extracurricular, activities. So they may know someone who attends a college of interest, so they may be able to shadow classes there. Students often guide the campus tours, so questions can be asked to student tour guides about campus life as well. And it is beneficial to engage with admission counselors in one-on-one meetings. If your student has questions about the admission process or general questions, the admission counselors can help. Although families can reach out to the admissions office, they do prefer the students being the ones who are asking the questions. And it also is important to research information on college websites first, as you do want to make sure that the information isn't found on the college website before asking the college admission counselor, because they don't really like that so much. And now moving on to college fairs. These are a great way to learn information about many colleges within a day's time. So with college fairs, there are often a large room full of hundreds of admission representatives from colleges around the state and around the country. A college fair is held for a couple hours at a time, and it's usually in the evening or the weekend day. And these allow students and families to learn information about various colleges within a short amount of time. They're in person, and currently there are virtual fairs still available. There are college fairs in Boston and Providence in the springtime, so I have the dates on the slide there for you. A college fair is another way for students to show demonstrated interest in a college, which for some schools such as Bryant University, Fairfield University, and Quinnipiac University, this adds to a student's application. And now I'm going to be handing it off to Ms. Kaplan, who's going to be discussing Naviance.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Hi, everyone. I will be going over the different aspects of Naviance. And so to start off, Naviance is a college and career platform that we use at Franklin High School. This tool allows for students to explore colleges and careers and can help place student and is a place where students can find helpful information surrounding the areas of study, student life, admissions for the particular colleges that they might be interested in. Starting in January, as Dave had said, we'll be working with juniors to navigate Naviance, and we'll also help them walk through the different components during our individual meetings. We also encourage parents to work alongside their students to help them with the college process, but want to highlight that this process should really be student run and students should take ownership over it. So all students have an account, but some might need their Naviance account reset. So if that's the case, just have them reach out to their guidance counselor and we'd be more than happy to help them with that. But this is a screenshot of a sample student account, and the home screen has various tabs, allowing for students to explore different colleges, careers, surveys. And for the purposes of this presentation, I will focus on the parts that pertain to juniors. So during students' junior years, they will meet with their guidance counselor to create a list of schools that they might be interested in, and that will go under the colleges I'm thinking about. It will be a nice place where students can keep a running list. And then moving on to the next slide, Naviance has a career interest profiler, which Dave also had mentioned. And this tool is great because it really does allow for students to explore what their preferences might be and what careers might align with those preferences. It has 60 questions and it takes a total of about 10 minutes to complete. The career profiler asks for students to respond with their level of interest. And once students fill out the interest profiler, they'll see 6 different career preferences and careers related to those interests. We ask that you please have your child fill it out already, or fill it out if they haven't already, and they can find it in Naviance under the self-discovery. And then on the next slide, this is an example of what one of the questions, or I'm sorry, one of the statements might say. So develop a way to better predict the weather. Students can decide if this is something that interests them, doesn't interest them, or that they're neutral about. And then on the Naviance homepage, students will see the colleges tab. So once they click on colleges, they will see the different parts of Naviance that they'll be using for the college application process. So one of these includes the letters of recommendation. And so students will ask a teacher, and preferably like right after April vacation, to write them a letter of recommendation. They will then request them on Naviance after asking the teacher. This way, counselors can send off their letters of recommendation to their list of schools once students begin to apply to those schools. And in Naviance, you'll also see additional parts such as colleges I'm thinking about, colleges I'm applying to, and the Supermatch college search, which I will talk about soon. And then we ask our juniors in the colleges I'm thinking about to begin to add schools they might want to apply to. This is a helpful tool and a way to assist students in tracking the colleges that they feel might be a good fit for them based on any research they've done or just what they've found in Naviance. And then in our Supermatch college search, that's a search criteria for finding schools of the best fit. So students can add in preferences with their college search, such as business, art, specific sport if they play one, or any other interests that they hope to pursue in college. And colleges will then be selected based on those preferences of best fit. And Supermatch schools of best fit, they show scores based on the search criteria. So it's important to note that on the next slide, when you see the percentages, that doesn't mean the percentage of the student getting in, that more shows the percentage of how much that school is a best fit for them. So seeing a 100% doesn't mean they have a 100% chance of getting in. It just means that that's a 100% match based on what they've put into Naviance. And so for like sample students, for example, a lot of students will see, this is the sample student screen, but this is what your student will see. And what this shows is a UMass Amherst scattergram. And so we have many students from Franklin High School apply to UMass Amherst. This is a great way for students to see how it's worked out for students at Franklin High. They can see if students have been accepted, deferred, denied, and in the legend, they'll be able to decipher what those different codes mean. And so it's a really helpful tool, and we really recommend that students utilize it as they begin to go through their college search. And then we also have another scattergram for Curry College, and you'll notice that this one has a little less data, just meaning that more students had applied to UMass Amherst than Curry College, but it's still showing you exactly what the data has been for students from Franklin High School applying. And then lastly, we wanted to highlight the About Me section on Naviance. So in the top right corner, students will click on the About Me and then surveys from your school. And in there, they will find a junior questionnaire. We ask that students please fill out this junior questionnaire, as it is extremely helpful for guidance counselors and writing their letter of recommendation. The questionnaire, students can share whether or not they feel their transcript is an accurate representation of their academic abilities, 5 words they might use to describe themselves, their academic and personal growth, clubs and activities they participate in, or any other questions that pertain to them. And as a reminder, please have your student reach out to your guidance counselor with any questions, because we are here to support and to help. And I will now pass it over to Ms. McVeigh.
Thanks, Joanna. I want to thank Abby, Dave, and Joanna. I know it's extraordinarily difficult to present to a screen, right? We're all in this business because we love being around people. And I know I thrive off of seeing reactions of people to know kind of the pace and if the message is coming across okay. So I know it's really, really hard to talk to a screen. So you all did an excellent job, and I appreciate the work that went in tonight. Just to wrap up, I wanted to draw your attention to some future meetings. This will not be the only time that we meet with you. We pride ourselves on the work we do with parents and keeping you as informed as possible. So we will again meet perhaps in person next, probably August. We're going to push up the time, I think, a little bit. We'll probably meet before the school year kicks off with parents of seniors, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into the college application process. We're finding more and more that families are really getting a head start, and many students are doing or completing the applications over the summer and really come to school with wanting to not necessarily submit, but tie some loose ends up. And so I feel that getting messages out and expectations out earlier would be better. So we will meet with you again late August, early September. And then I really want to put a plug out there for the MIFA organization, the Massachusetts Educational Finance Authority. If you are not familiar with this resource in the state of Massachusetts, I would highly encourage you to go to their website. It's not only specific to financial aid, but they have an inordinate amount of resources around the college research process. Lots of tips for parents and for students. We really rely on them to give outstanding support around the financial aid process, and they do a variety of webinars. Just as a side note, one of the questions we receive a lot from families, and rightly so, is when can I start to apply, or when can I start to search for scholarships? And just so you know, the financial aid process really opens up in October of the senior year. That's when you're able to fill out the forms. So if you wanted to get a jump start and kind of understand generally what it entails so that you're prepared to kind of get going in October, there are webinars live and also also recorded on the MIFA website. Certainly take a look at that. But like I said, I can't emphasize their contributions to this process as well. So bookmark, I think Dave used that maybe example with another website, definitely bookmark the MIFA website. As far as tonight goes, I do see a couple of questions in the question and answer box. I'm not sure if one of the counselors had kept track of that. I think I saw Abby writing some down. So we'll be sure to look at those over the next few days and either get back to you individually. We'll also put out a FAQ document. So if any questions come up over the next few days, please add it to that document, and we will be sure to answer all of those and post those to our website as well. So I think that ends tonight's presentation. As I listen to the rain hit the windows, I'm not sure I actually want to end. I think going outside does not seem too appealing right now, but I do know everyone has been here since 7 o'clock this morning. So I'm conscious of that. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. Please reach out with any questions, and please look to the website next week for the recording of this event. If you miss something or you have neighbors ask about it, that will be up next week as well as the actual presentation that we shared. Good night, everyone.